Alright, well, we're getting ready to start replacing some of the worn out components on the engine. Right now I've got the two idler pulleys, the oil pressure sender, and I might decide to throw in the thermostat while I'm at it. But yeah, as you can see, the weather isn't exactly favorable for it. It's snowing, but most of it's melting as soon as it hits the ground, so I guess I will just have to do my best to get it done as quick as possible. The old pulleys are off and the new ones are ready to go on. Now, some of you may be wondering why I'm doing this, especially in this weather, when there's, you know, they spin, they move, they just make a bit of noise. Well, in this case, a lot of noise. This one's a little quieter. You probably couldn't hear it on camera, but the bearing does make noise and it's got play back and forth. Whereas these, completely silent. Now, the reason that this is important is because this is a draw on your engine. These bearings having resistance means that your engine is using power to move them. It's putting extra strain on your accessories because it takes more torque to spin the belt, which means it's pulling on the shafts of whatever accessory it's doing, it's gone around, to overcome that torque, as well as lowering your gas mileage. And if any of you have ever been stuck on the side of the road with a broken belt, you know why replacing your idler pulleys, while not exactly an expensive deal, I think I got both of these shipped to me for about 20 bucks each. Why it's so important is because you can end up on the side of the road. If that belt snaps, I have nothing driving my water pump, and while this truck isn't exactly running cool as it is, it's not going to run any better without a fan or a water pump. So this is cheap insurance. This is 5 to 10 to 15 more years of engine life, because these aren't going to seize, snap the belt, or at least keep the belt from spinning, and burn up my engine because I didn't feel like taking the 15 minutes and spending the $40 to replace them. This is so much quieter up here now. I don't know if you guys can tell the difference between one of my last videos where I had the engine running and this one, but that gravelly noise is gone. You can hear a little bit of chirp from the alternator and a little bit of whirring from the power steering pump because the bearings are wearing out on that. But I mean, it is so much different. And just think about this. You're not spending money replacing belts. You're not spending money replacing brackets that hold accessories on. You're not spending money on gas that you don't need to. This is such a cheap and easy way to make sure that you don't end up on the side of the road praying to God that somebody pulls up behind you with the number of a good parts store and the hand tools to do the swap. The hardest part is taking the belt off of the pulley and putting it back on when you're done. That is what took the most force, other than breaking that bolt loose. But 2 wrenches, 1 mouth and 1 hole, pop it right off. I've already showed that trick before, so it's not hard to figure out. But yeah, this can save me, depending on how bad the bearings were, this could save me 1 to 2 miles per gallon. This can free up 5 or 10 horsepower, maybe, depending on how bad the accessory bearings are and the idler pulley bearings are. There's so many things that this can help prevent and help solve, because if I've actually seen a problem where the air compressor pump had locked up and the car wouldn't even run because of the strain on the belt. It was actually preventing the car from turning over. So yeah, cheap insurance to make sure that you don't have problems in the future. You might want to look into that if you ever want to have a car last you beyond the average 2 to 3 years before resale that most people do. Well, used to do. On to our next problem, the oil pressure sensor. Now, this is 1 inch and 1/16, but it's so long that a standard deep well socket won't fit on it, so they want you to buy a special socket. And yeah, that's my jerry-rig window defroster as of right now until I get the new squirrel cage I have ordered. The hull on that is rounded out, so it's sloppy as all hell on the shaft of the blower motor, so I need to replace that because it's already starting to wear through the housing. And that's the thermostat up there. I don't know if I'm going to get that today. But anyway, back to the oil pressure sensor. Turns out that they want you to buy a special socket if you go down to your local hardware store and you're friends with the owners, or at least on good terms, they may let you borrow a water heater element wrench for free. Now, it doesn't fit perfectly, but the 1/1/16 water heater element socket does work for this. And because of its design, it will fully accept the sensor and allow you to get something on there to turn it in and out. Makes life much easier. So, next time you're forced to hunt and find something that'll work for you, don't be afraid to innovate. Quick before shot so you guys know I'm not lying about there not being any, or a working oil pressure sensor. Running. No oil pressure on the gauge. Here we go. Old one is out and new one is in. Now, this was still stuck in the engine and this wire was still connected inside here. You don't have to get it super tight. I mean, this was loose on the housing, as I showed you before, but it's an oil pressure sensor, and it's got sealant on the threads. So if you're putting it hard enough to damage this, or have any problems, you've got other issues to worry about than your oil pressure sensor being broke. I'll give you a quick show. We have oil pressure! Haha! Wunderbar! And it goes down very slowly. I'm not exactly sure why. But anyway, yeah, if you're wondering how this works, I believe it's a very similar process to how most of your headlight dimmer switches work. There's a piston in here that moves back and forth, and it's got a bigger end on this side with this plastic diaphragm. Thankfully that was there, otherwise I would have been in trouble with an oil leak. Way to go, Dodge. I mean, why can't you do this with the neons, damn it? They always leak. You get about 15,000 miles and then the things start leaking. I think that's the most I got out of one of those, was 15,000 miles, if that. As far as this end, it is pushed by that piston and moves back and forth. Now, I'm not sure if there is a load sensor or if it's a coil like I was talking about with a dimmer switch, whereas the further this pushes, there's a coil of wire in your typical one. In your typical dimmer switch, there's a coil of wire that goes around in a ceramic housing, and as you move the contact around that wire, it changes the amount of resistance going through it, which changes the brightness of your dash lights. If this is similar, the more it's forced up, the resistance between the positive and ground provided through this metal connection, I don't know what exactly the terminology would use is, as the resistance changes, that changes the amount of voltage going to the gauge, which is why your gauge will go up and down. It's similar to how a gas gauge works, at least ones without a digital level sensor. It's how a lot of things work. It's how old radio knobs works. The varistors in old radios would work the same way, just changing the resistance to adjust the tuning or the volume. This has something similar, although it's entirely electrical, not mechanical. For the heater, it's got 3 different levels of resistors, and as you move the switch through the gauge, there's a resistor pack on the firewall inside the engine compartment that you move the switch one, it powers one of the resistors and only lets a certain amount of current in through the blower. You move it to the next switch, it changes resistors, lets more current through, you change, so on and so forth until you get the maximum power you can into the blower. So yeah, it's very simple technology, but it can make a big difference. But yeah, way to go Dodge for the diaphragm. Thank you. Thanks for watching.